Welcome to another edition of Around the Table, Politics 2020. I'm Stacy Schmidt. This is where we discuss the political side of things and some other things that might be on our minds as well. The country got to witness the two presidential candidates last night in a debate, if you can call it a debate. It was more of a catastrophe in Cleveland or a debate debacle. Now, I'd like to bring in our panelists to talk about this and what happened last night. So let's delve into this with them. Joining us is our former Republican Pennsylvania Governor, Tom Corbett. He also served as State Attorney General for the state of Pennsylvania and U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Pennsylvania. Governor Corbett teaches law now at Duquesne University. On the other side of the table is the former chairman of the state Democratic Party, Jim Byrne. Jim also served as chairman of the Allegheny County Council and as mayor of Millvale. Jim is an attorney now in Pittsburgh. Staying on the Democratic side of the table is Amanda Green Hawkins. Amanda served as a national committee woman representing Pennsylvania to the Democratic Party. She also served on Allegheny County Council and is currently an attorney for a major union based here in Pittsburgh. On the other side of the table, we find Keith Schmidt. Keith's political background is strong, dating back to the Reagan campaign of 1980. Keith was also the state director for former Republican Senator Rick Santorum. Keith was also an advisor to Santorum's 2012 presidential campaign. Keith now has his own consulting firm here in the city of Pittsburgh. And we also turn now to the great philosopher of Around the Table, Joe Mystic. Joe is a familiar name in Democratic politics across the state. He's held several positions within city government, including deputy mayor. Joe teaches law now at Duquesne University, and you can read his weekly column on politics and life in the Trib. Now, I want to begin this discussion, if you guys don't mind, with some quotes from the Washington Post's columnist Dan Balz. He made these comments shortly after the debate ended last night. I'm going to quote him. "No one alive has ever seen a presidential debate like Tuesday night's unseemly shout fest between President Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. 90 minutes of invective, interruptions, and personal insults. It was an insult to the public as well, and a sad example of the state of American democracy 5 weeks before the election. Biden cleared the low bar of expectations that the Trump campaign had inexplicably set for him, but hardly delivered a shining performance. Partisans will call winners and losers as they see them, and those judgments will be predictable. But collectively, this was not a night when the country could claim victory. Instead, it was quite the opposite." So, Amanda, I want to start with you. Your comments on Dan Balz's comments.
I feel the same way. I feel really deflated after watching that debacle last night. I would point out, first and foremost, that my children are often in the room when there are political debates and things going on because they are very interested in what's going on, and I want them to be interested and informed. And so my son, who will be 10 in a couple of weeks, watched the whole debate with us. And I was almost in tears by the end because usually I'm telling him, this is a lesson for you about government, how things work, this is important. And all he saw was people rolling around in mud, essentially. And I had no words for him about the lesson it is that I was hoping he would get. And for most people, it seems, they have no words really to describe what went on, except for this grudge match, which really didn't do anything, in my opinion, to further the cause of either side. Perhaps Democrats would say that Joe Biden appeared more presidential, and I would agree with that Joe Biden did appear more presidential. He did look at the camera and speak directly to the American people a number of times, which I found soothing in many moments. And in contrast to Trump, who was interrupting and combative the whole time and just shouting over him like a schoolyard fight, basically. And when you see that happening in the schoolyard, you can remember these fights. When someone's losing, they'll start talking about your mama, right? And that's what it reminded me of. It was all of these allegations about raising about his son and $3.5 million and your mama. It was just insane.
All right. Governor Corbett, you said that yesterday when we did our pre-debate program that you felt there was just going to be a lot of ramblings last night. Was it ramblings or?
I'm going to go out and buy a lottery ticket today. First off, yesterday I said these aren't really debates. Well, I never envisioned what we saw last night. And I have to tell you, I think the entire country is disappointed with the whole process of the debate and with the result of getting no information that isn't out there in a commercial already. When I got done looking at it and with my wife, I said to her, this should be required viewing for anybody who's getting ready to do a debate as to how not to do a debate. It was clear to me that Vice President Biden had taken some coaching and was trying to follow it, didn't always succeed. It was also clear to me that the president, if he was coached, didn't follow it and just got in there, and as he has done many times, just kept speaking over everybody and being the center of attention, not to his benefit, but actually to his detriment. There were many opportunities he had to ask some good questions or to wait out answers, and he just didn't know how to do it.
Jim Byrne, yesterday, the pre-debate special we did, you said a lot of this is going to fall on the moderator, Chris Wallace. What did you think?
I was disappointed in Chris Wallace. I really did think he was best suited for the type of interaction that was going to be inevitable. And based on how well he did with President Trump in an interview 2 weeks ago, I was cautiously optimistic. That didn't work out very well. And within minutes, we were all communicating with each other as to how bad it was. And it only got worse. He set the format, is my understanding. 6 15-minute segments, 2 minutes for each, and then a minute or two for interaction. Where were the opening remarks by each of them? Where were the closing remarks by each of them? It was a recipe for disaster. And at the beginning, he attempted to control the narrative, but then he lost the ability to do that. I don't know if we need to have 2 more debates after what we saw last night, unless some serious modifications are made, including the moderator saying in no uncertain terms, these are the rules, you agree to these rules. The minute either of you violates the rule and tries to talk over the other, I'm going to shut your microphone off. Maybe something as drastic and as unfortunate as that, when we're talking about the highest office in the land, is going to be necessary.
All right. Those are your thoughts. Let's find out now what Joe Mystic thinks. You said when we started to record this program, you felt a little sad today, Joe.
Yeah, it was a disheartening event. I tossed and turned much of the night. I, throughout the night, received text messages from people who were obviously, having a hard time sleeping as well. If you're a fan of America, you were let down last night. I see no purpose in having anything like this repeated ever again. We have the technology available. We do it right here. We struggle with it. Sometimes our microphones are muted and sometimes they're unmuted. And there's no reason why these 2 candidates, if we're going to move forward, and if we're going to get any real information, a real discussion of the issues facing America, instead of an attempt to drive us off the issues, there's no reason why they can't be in separate places, just as we do here on Zoom. And there's no reason why there can't be a host who can mute and unmute as they take turns speaking. That's what I want. I want a disciplined exposition of the issues. That's all America wants. And we can get that, but we don't need another one of these. I heard from some friends who live in Europe last night. They got up early to watch the debate. One of them said, Europeans were laughing at America until now, and now they're pitying America. That's just the opposite of what we need in these tough times.
Keith Schmidt, you said yesterday that you were hoping the president would be presidential. What happened?
Is that how you want to start this? I can tell you, that it didn't reach any of my expectations on either side. I could tell you that it was difficult to watch. I joked about saying I had a front row seat. I wish I didn't. I wish I could have slithered out. I was forced to watch 90 minutes because all of us good folks were going to gather today and discuss it. Had I not been on this forum this morning, I could tell you I'd have moved on to Law and Order. or something on Netflix. And I fear, to an extent, a lot of the American people did that. I don't know if they've looked at the ratings and how they dropped off, but I would not be surprised at all that few Americans finished the 90 minutes. We talked about the fact that this will be the most watched debate in history. I'm sure it was, at least for the first 30 minutes. I really question who's going to watch in a couple weeks when they meet again. Both of them have a lot to do to prepare themselves and to reevaluate their performances last night. I don't heap praise on the president. I don't heap praise on his Democratic opponent. I don't heap praise on the moderator last night. I don't know that there were any winners. And I agree that the American people were maybe the biggest losers, because both candidates, I think, threw some red meat to their base. But other than that, I don't think it moved anybody. But the most concerning part of it for me is maybe it was the prescription of America. It was telling us how divided we are right now at this point in time. I don't remember in my lifetime a time when we could find no common ground on anything, from the economy, the Supreme Court, the environment, the healthcare, the pandemic, the civil unrest. Wasn't there anything that we could say, oh, we agree on that one principle or that one issue? There's none. And that is also moving into society. I mean, I think we talked several weeks ago about, just in general, there's just the people are on edge right now. There is such a lack of civility in America that does not make me very happy. So I will be looking to see what happens in the next couple of weeks. I have a lot of angst that we're going to do this again on the 15th. I hope, by the good Lord, somehow both these people bring a different game, and the American people have a little better view of where they are right now on the issues and where they're heading, can maybe help them make an informed decision. But last night, they didn't get any of that from.
I'm going to stay with you and then ask all of the other panelists the same question, and that is, and then you don't have to go long on this at all, but should there be more debates?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I think they have to have the right to try to do a do-over. I mean, I can't imagine that both camps didn't pull themselves. The team didn't meet somewhere and say, "What the hell happened? Like, we gotta fix this. This is not the impression we want, either on our base or the undecided voters." And I don't care if the other guy doesn't fix it. You need to fix it in 2 weeks on the 15th. So I do believe that we stick to the program. I believe the vice presidential debate is a week away or something.
Next week.
And then after that, the second presidential is on the 15th. But yeah, I think I'll give him one more chance. But my expectations are, unfortunately, pretty low.
All right. Keith, thank you. Joe Mistek, I'm just going to go back in reverse order here. Should there be another debate or debates?
There should be a debate, not another debate. We haven't had one yet. That was a farce last night. So if we can set the rules and the guidelines to tightly control this in such a way that we can have a real exposition of the issues, yes. But whatever that farce was, we just have to walk away from it. You know, if it's going to be anything like that, if there's no control that keeps anybody from steamrolling anybody else, then there's no point in Americans wasting their time watching this mortadella. You know what mortadella? It's Italian bologna, and that's what this is. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Mortadello. Now I know what mortadello is. All right. Jim Byrne, your thoughts?
Next week for the vice presidential debate, we will see civility. We will see professionalism. We will see how the presidential, whatever you want to call that thing last night, should have looked like. I think it will be spirited. I think you'll see a real good conversation on issues. And perhaps those who are preparing the president and Mr. Biden can learn from that for the debate on the 15th. I'm willing to give it another chance. You know, a lot of times after a debacle on a sporting event, the coach will say, we're not even going to look at the film. We're going to throw it out. We're going to hit a reset. Both sides, there's nothing to look at last night unless you want to just feel embarrassed about what you did. Throw out the film, start over, and maybe you can learn something from what we're going to see next week.
All right. Governor, you've been through debates. What happens when it's not a good debate for one of the participants? Are you taken to the side and lectured or pointed out what you should be doing?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, hopefully I had a number of different debates. Always came away feeling like we did well. What can we improve upon? And that's usually what everybody tells you. And everybody has an idea, and everybody has a different perspective. You should have been more in this face. You should have been less in this face. You know, I have comments about Biden. I have comments about Trump. Right now, we're not going to change them. When it comes to whether we should have another debate, I doubt that. I think there's a possibility that we won't, because they're going to have to go back and set the rules again. And one of those rules is to give the moderator the microphone switch. And I don't think that the president is ever going to agree to that. So don't be surprised. I don't think it's going to happen, but don't be surprised if it does happen that way. That makes the vice presidential debate much more important than any vice presidential debate to date, because they are going to discuss the issues. There was no discussion of issues last night. There was discussion of commercials. They are going to show civility. They are going to show professionalism. And so I'm going to be tuning in and watching. Obviously, I know the vice president. We were governors together. I'm going to be looking forward to see how he and Senator Harris conduct themselves and address the issues rather than address personalities and name calling.
Amanda, you started this discussion by saying that your son was disappointed in what happened last night. Would you allow him to watch another debate?
I have to pause. I don't know if he would be interested in watching another debate after last night, which is sad, and a sad tale for what's happened and for what we've become. And for me, you know, I'm saddened by the whole thing. But for another reason, we had a president who, when given the opportunity to denounce hate groups, said, stand back and stand by instead, which is not a clear denunciation of hate groups. And so he also witnessed that as a little Black boy here in America. And when given an opportunity to talk about what he has supposedly done for the Black community, he spends like a minute, if that, talking about crime reform, and then starts immediately talking about and spending more time on law and order, which is typically meant disparate treatment for poor people, and particularly people of color and Black and brown people in inner city communities. And if given another opportunity, if there's a chance that he can, the president can expound on that, or perhaps retract some of those statements and offer clearer explanations, I'd be all for it.
All right, I'm going to stay.
Hope and give my son some hope.
I'm going to stay with you as we go through this again. I'm going to change the topic a little bit here, in that, given what happened in the debate last night, how do you think this is going to affect the other races that are on the ticket, mainly the senatorial races around the country and the congressional races? Will it have any effect at all?
Well, when it comes to how people feel about us as a country and how they feel about things where the rubber meets the road in their own backyard, I think we're looking at two different things. So on a national level, I think that they can put that aside and look more to how things are happening in their own backyards, and then make decisions accordingly. I don't think it will affect those down ballot races as much, because I think people have a way of compartmentalizing or dividing the presidential race from other races on the ticket.
All right, Governor?
I'll tell you what, if I were a senator or representative seeking election right now, I don't think it really affected them. But they're going to have to separate themselves in that respect, and I think they will. People aren't going to hold it. But they had to have been pulling their hair out saying, would you knock it off? Answer the questions. Don't make it difficult on everybody else. Problem is, the president doesn't think about everybody else. And he's not really a party person, if we have party persons even left today. He's an individual who is looking to win the way he thinks he's won all these years in business. When it comes to the individuals, the senators and the representatives and the state row officers here in Pennsylvania and all the House and Senate members, they're going to be campaigning on their own issues. They may get confronted by the media saying, well, what do you think of the performance? They're going to have to be careful how they answer that. But I don't think it affects their race at all.
All right, well, I guess what I'm asking, and I'll say this to Jim Burns, former state Democratic Party chairman, will there be any coattail effect from this debate last night or from the candidates now looking forward?
I don't think that it's going to change any of the margins significantly, if at all, in any of the down ballot races. The row offices are up in Pennsylvania right now. You have the treasurer, the auditor general, and the attorney general. But I agree with the governor. They do have to be careful in how they respond, because they are going to be questioned by the media and others about their take on whatever that was we saw last night. Now, folks like Lindsey Graham in South Carolina, who is in a race and where we've seen $17 million raised for his opponent after the Supreme Court issue came to the front. Someone like that has to be extremely careful on what he says or what he does, because in a very close race, a gaffe on his analysis of last night could cost him enough votes to cost him the seat. Generally speaking, no. But in tight, very, very tight races, be very careful what you say.
Joe Mystic, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity for Democratic challengers in some of these Senate races to demand that their Republican opponents reject many of the things the president said, and certainly to decry his behavior last night. I'd turn up the heat on my Republican opponent if I were in one of those races. Many of them are very tight races too. And we know that when they are put in a tight spot like that, it's hard for them to reject what the president's done, because he'll punish them for that. So they're between a hard place and a rock on these issues. As a Democrat, though, I would use this as an opportunity to increase my fundraising. I'd be out today with clips and, targeting certain groups, targeting those comments that he made about the Proud Boys, the hate group, where they, telling them to stand by. I'd be using that to raise funds.
It's happening, Professor. I've been getting inundated with solicitations.
Yeah.
Did you hear that? Did you see that?
Yeah.
All morning.
All right, Keith, I'm going to bring you in on this subject. You dealt with worked with a United States senator. If something like this were to happen, what's the talk inside the senatorial campaign at this point?
Well, I believe with most of the people that spoke this morning in that I think they'll be able to separate these two campaigns. The campaign for the United States Senate and the row offices, statewide row offices and others literally spend tens of millions of dollars. These aren't, they're making their own case as to why they should be elected to a particular office. But I think the unintended consequence that comes from the top is really turnout. And there is the argument that when you have two individuals at the top of the ticket with such a personal disdain for each other, zero respect for each other, that are willing to engage in the personal attacks like they did last night, and really you see no common ground. There's such a frustration of how they conduct themselves. Oftentimes that suppresses the turnout. And because a lot of people, unfortunately, as much as I'd like to remind people, their row officers and their congressmen and their senators often have more effect on your day-to-day life than the top of the ticket, but they make their decisions based on the top of the ticket. And I just hope and pray that the base supporters on both sides of the aisle aren't just getting frustrated and are just may walk away from this election because of that frustration.
Stacy,
Go ahead, Jim.
if I may, to follow up on Keith, the majority of the Democrats, more Democrats are voting by mail than are Republicans. Most Republicans polled say they're waiting until election day to come out. So if Keith is correct, and what we saw last night is a disenfranchisement, and folks are more reluctant to, quote unquote, go to the polls, I think that's advantage Democrat. They may get frustrated with what they saw President Trump do last night and hurry up and get that ballot filled out and mail it in, as they have been doing since it started. versus a disenfranchised Republican who doesn't want to use a ballot, who says, I'm just going to sit this one out. So that scenario could play itself out.
It's interesting. It could be a key point then on election night, that if the Republican turnout is not that strong, and if indeed more Democrats do use mail-in ballots and vote Democrat, then we might know by election.
But we are a minority party. The Republican Party is a large minority party. We don't have the numbers the Democrats have. I mean, the fact is, if you can't build in swing Democrats to come home to the president, there is no chance. So the argument always can be made that I understand that there's a lot of Democratic ballots being returned early, but I don't fall into the mantra that they're all going to Joe Biden. I think a large chunk of them are swing Democrats and blue-collar Democrats that are moving to the president of the United States.
Okay, I want to switch gear here, and anybody who wants to jump in, please jump in. We didn't talk much about issues. We didn't see much issues talked about last night. One that's still hanging fire, and for millions and millions of Americans, is that Congress has yet to pass another stimulus relief bill. We have airline workers who are going to be dismissed as of today, Thursday, because there's no new deal for the airlines either. Is this going to become an issue in this campaign, or is it just something that's now, old news?
I think the president's tax returns, as reported by the New York Times, put that at issue right now. I think people are looking at the fact that, he's not willing to go along with the $600 unemployed folks were getting that was keeping them viable, keeping their families in food and in shelter. And he paid $750 tax in a couple of years, paid zero tax in a lot of other years. So I think that issue juxtaposes what's going on now for the needy people who are suffering as a result of the coronavirus.
That is, by the way, Joe, I will have to say this as a caveat, that is what the New York Times is reporting. We don't necessarily see his tax returns. So,
pardon me?
I said we have not necessarily seen his tax returns. So this is what the New York Times reporting says. He'd only paid $750.
Well,
the president last night said he paid more than that. So I'm just trying to be fair.
Stace, I think that's the only thing left to say. But, I believe these reports about the tax returns.
All right, that's fine. All right, anybody else about the lack of money coming to Americans or businesses and another relief act?
Yeah, the only thing I would comment is that's where the Don ticket could come into play. For whatever reason, that debate has not been as aggressive with the Biden camp or with the Trump camp on commenting on that relief. But I think a lot of people running for Congress and serving in Congress are getting those questions every single day. And who will get the blame game, I guess, if it doesn't come quick enough. The question is, who are the American people going to blame that those relief checks did not come to help them in these perilous times?
Vice presidential candidates need to talk about it next week. We've already talked about how we expect to see more civility and professionalism. We also need to see more issues. I think that will be an issue that is mandatory for those candidates to discuss next week. And we've already talked repeatedly about this vice presidential race being the most significant in our lifetimes based on the dynamic of the two candidates for president, including age. So absolutely, Keith. So we do need to have that conversation as soon as next week on that specific issue.
Well,
and I think that they're going to go with the Supreme Court a little bit more than they covered yesterday.
Yeah,
I agree.
Some of the things like we saw last night, they often point to it and say, that's why we can't get anything done in Washington. Look at how they're acting. And so then it becomes a matter of looking at who is elected and who is serving and pointing the finger and saying, those are the people to blame for our current state of affairs. And when that happens, the American people will usually decide to go another way to create that change they want to see.
All right, well, we've teased ahead to the next week, and then, of course, will be the vice presidential debate. So I want to thank all of you for being with us today, and we will talk about the vice presidential debate next week on Around the Table. Have a good week, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.